Hi, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Fundamentalists. We are coming at you once again from two different parts of the world. I, Elliott Morgan, am here in Los Angeles, California, inside my trademark Ellie Hut, where I spend a lot of my time. And it's super convenient out here, and it's my little happy place until I have to use the restroom, and then I have to go back into the house, and sometimes I can't because my partner is also recording something and we have to work that out. So occasionally I urinate outside my house. You didn't need to know that, but I do that. There's a grate outside and I found it. I consider it my little Ellie urinal. Anyway, this isn't what the podcast is about. Pete is also coming at you remotely from Belfast, Ireland. Pete, how's Belfast?
Oh, it's great. I am live and direct from Narnia, basically. This is a place called Crawfordsburn where C.S. Lewis spent a lot of his time. And the forest that I can see out the window is the one that supposedly inspired what Narnia looks like. So it's pretty beautiful. The sun's out.
Have you peed in it?
I haven't peed in it yet, but I'll maybe do that tonight. That could be a little treat.
Yeah,
You know,
you have a shindig to go to.
I
And
got a
that's usually how
shindig.
yeah, that's how parties end for me. I end up usually peeing outside or by
Yeah,
a dumpster. I would definitely pee in that forest if I had the opportunity.
yeah.
I
I'll
don't know
maybe
what you're
try
waiting on. Yeah.
that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, folks, a few housekeeping things. First of
Uh-huh.
all, Pete comes back a week from today, I guess, right? That's
Yes, yes.
okay, which is pretty exciting. We're recording this on what is it? May something or other? Are we still in May?
Yeah, something like that. End of
May
May.
20th.
End of May.
Yeah. And so when that happens, we'll be back in person. This particular episode is on the idea of the identified patient, which I've been thinking about a lot lately, and we'll get into that, which is very fun. And before that, also thank you to the folks who have signed up at patreon.com/the fundamentalists. We very much appreciate it. And also, I put the first post up there, Pete. Did you know that?
Oh no, I didn't. Oh, that's good. I'm maybe gonna put some stuff up there as well, actually, start to kind of populate it to
Yeah,
say
cool.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked the patrons to throw out some ideas on what they would like, and some people have left some really good ideas. And then I also just put a photo of like a stack of books that I have and kind of gave little summaries. And one of my favorite comments, which was the first comment, was Elliot, please don't be smart. I am not comfortable when you do smart things. And I was like, me neither. But
There's no worries about that.
don't worry.
That's never gonna happen.
Yeah, it's either I'm BSing it well or I'm just coming off completely wrong. But yeah, it's all very fun. So you can sign up there, folks, if you would like. We now have the ability to get this sound edited, which is so wonderful. So I hope you're enjoying the higher quality. And also, if you would like to see me live, I'm working on my new hour of stand-up comedy, which I've mentioned before, called The Ridiculous Universe, which you can get tickets for at elliottmorgan.com/tour. And it is in Spokane and Tacoma, Washington, followed by Tampa and Orlando, followed by Columbus and Liberty Township, Ohio. So if you're interested in any of that, it's going to be all across the summer, just little one-off shows. And I would love for you to come do it because I'm very excited to talk about different things. And I'm ordering all of the bits right now, and I'm trying to figure out a creative way to order it. I think I talked about this last time. Rather than do bit, I'm trying to do I'm trying to diagram it like almost like a spiral. So it'll start almost in the middle, and then it'll kind of spiral out. But anyway, we'll get into
Oh,
that
very nice.
on a video. That's not relevant to what we're talking about here. Identified
Yeah.
patient. Okay.
Yes. Kick us
Do you have
off.
any?
This is a great subject. And yeah, I got
Okay.
a few things to say, but you were the one who came up with this. So have you been doing some work on this idea or just reading about it or
I
what
read
what
about it. Yeah. My therapist brought it up. We were talking about really we weren't even talking about family dynamics. We were talking about how family dynamics can extend into also work environments and collaborative environments, which would include, in my particular case, Valley folk, which is
Mhm.
where I've spent a lot of time over the past 4 years. And I don't want to get into the details of it, but it was a thought process that led me to kind of be very curious about this subject. And my therapist was like, "This is something you should talk about on the Fundamentalists." And I was like, "We usually don't take suggestions from fans." And he was like, "Don't worry, I'm not a fan. That's not going to happen." But yeah, so this is for those of you who don't know. You want me to dive into it, Pete?
Please do go for it.
All right, folks. I'm going to do what I do best when it comes to things I want to pretend like I know what I'm talking about, which is read from the Wikipedia page. So here we go. Identified patient is a clinical term often heard in family therapy discussion. It describes one family member in a dysfunctional family who expresses the family's authentic inner conflicts. Usually, the quote designated patient expresses their physical symptoms unconsciously, unaware they are making overt dysfunctional family dynamics that have been covert and which no one can talk about at home. Occasionally, the identified patient is partly conscious of why and how they have become the focus of concern in the family system. So, the example I heard was you imagine you're a therapist, some parents come in, their daughter is let's say anorexic, and so they sit down, and through the course of therapy they realize it's really not the daughter who is the problem. The daughter is actually manifesting what's going on with the parents who have created an environment of lack of communication or whatever. It's built up and now it's manifesting in this symptom. So as a family systems dynamic, the overt symptoms of identified patient draw attention away from the quote elephants in the room no one can talk about, which need to be discussed, such as a pending separation or divorce. If covert abuse occurs between family members, the overt symptoms can draw attention away from the perpetrators. All right. The identified patient is a kind of diversion and a kind of scapegoat. Love that term. Often a child. This is the split off false carrier of a breakdown in the entire family system, which can be a transgenerational disturbance or trauma. Now, this leads us to criticism of the idea of identified patient, which is my favorite tab on the Wikipedia, every Wikipedia page.
By the way, I think
Extending,
this is how we should do all future fundamentalist podcasts. I think you should
just
just
read
read
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia
Yeah,
pages.
it's just an hour of me just clicking, which is basically what this is because I did go down a Wikipedia wormhole on this, but it's almost done. So, extending the original concept of the identified patient, the anti psychiatry movement went on, which is a fun term, the anti psychiatry movement. I feel like I might be a part of that, and I didn't even know it. The anti psychiatry movement went on to argue it is the family who is chiefly mad rather than the individual the family identifies as sick, positing also that the latter might be, in fact, the least disturbed member of the family nexus. Now, I agree with that. I don't even see how that's a criticism. Just sounds more like something I agree with. Now, just to bring it back full circle, spiral, Carl Jung, who viewed individual neurosis as often derived from whole family or social groups, considered himself a case in point. Of course he did, little narcissist. I feel very strongly I'm under the influence of things or questions left incomplete and unanswered by my parents and grandparents and more distant ancestors, an impersonal karma within a family which is passed on from parents to children. Now, this brings me, last but not least, to one of my favorite Carl Jung quotes, uh, which is, excuse me, I have to, here it is. The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. I just like that phrase a lot, and it reminded me of it. There's no particular reason. Um, Now, I also don't think of this too much in terms of my own family systems currently, but I also think about are you writing things down?
I was trying to, but every pen I lift up isn't working. So,
It just sounds too like scribbling, so it sounds like you're ferociously writing things.
yeah, it's inspired lots of thoughts. But keep going.
Well, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I've been over the past couple months thinking about it in terms of conceptualizing some of the things I've experienced in my professional life, and it definitely lines up with this. There's been times where I have seen what I believe to be the problem of a situation, realized later it was the identified patient that was actually a manifestation of a global internal conflict that did not get resolved when the was primarily on the identified patient. And that's going to be as vague, that's going to be as specific as I get on that front. But we could revisit it later, depending on how we feel. But that's more of a conversation for us when we're in person together than it is when we're remote. So, what are your thoughts popping up here, Pete? What do you think?
Yeah, no, so I love it. Yeah, the first thing I wanted to kind of maybe talk about is how this actually has a much more correct view of what human beings are. So we tend to think that human beings are atoms, individuals, that I am in my head, you're in your head, and we interact in the public world. And we think of when you're born, you kind of jump into the public world. So you start off as an individual and then you go into the public world. But the truth is more the other way around, that we are public first. We kind of are colonized by language. Before we can even speak, all of these words are being spoken around us. Our parents, our siblings, all of these people are speaking. and we learn to speak. We're colonized by these words. So before we even speak them, we are spoken by them. And so actually, it takes years before we kind of like become an individual, begin to get a sense of self. So technically, we are so much more intertwined with our environment and with our families than we may otherwise think. And I know some people who have had this very problem with one of their children. Their child is suffering from various things, and what they've done is they've sent the child to a variety of doctors.
Hmm, hmm,
And
hmm.
they talk about basically how the doctor, there's a problem with the brain, and if only they kind of can resolve this problem, it's going to be fixed. And basically aren't asking the question whether the child's issues are actually a manifestation of a problem within the family. In other
Hmm.
words, the symptoms are not the problem, they're the solution to a problem within the family. So yeah, so that's
Yeah,
basically what this is.
the symptoms are just the check engine light, and you can't if you turn off the check engine light, you're still gonna have a little broken engine if you're not careful, which reminds me of I just got my car fixed. Did I tell you this?
No, no. I knew
Spent a
your car's always kind of playing up in some way, isn't
It's
it?
got some kinda yeah, it's got some
Yeah.
kinda attitude, and I think a lot of it was I didn't take it anywhere that knew what they were doing, and now it works. It's been great. Like, it's back to, like, I love it. I, like, love driving it. It's wonderful. I have a Volvo for anybody who gives a crap, little Volvo SUV, and I do love it for all of her idiosyncrasies and all of her problems, but when I brought it in, they were like, what do you got going on?" And I was like, "Oh, I just haven't been driving it for a really long time because, it's been the pandemic and I just haven't, it's been sitting a while and the check engine light's on. And then also this is going on. And I think this isn't working and this isn't working." And he goes, "All right, well, let me get in and see kind of what's going on." Super nice guy. Gets in. He gets out of the car. He goes, "Okay." And he looks at me and he goes, "Did you want to wait till every light on the car came on before you brought it in?" And I was like, "Ah, that is how I deal with my life
That's
as
like
a
a
whole."
Christmas tree. It's
That's
your
what I said. Yeah.
Christmas. Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, I wanted to wait till it was like Christmas in there." And he was like, "All right, we'll give you a call when it's ready." And he gave me a call, and it hurt my heart, hurt my bank account, but it was all worth it. But yeah, yeah, it's the symptoms tell you what's going on. I also like the what when you were saying that the idea of this. I just like the word, but participation mystique. You know
Oh yeah,
that word,
I
the
do.
idea it's like a union thing before you learn words and you're a baby and you're just at one with everything. You have that participation mystique. It's your everything's
Ah.
magical, everything's omnipotent because you don't know nothing.
Very good. So it's a Jungian term for that type of immersion in language before
Yeah,
we,
yeah.
it's kind of almost where we're spoken by language before we speak. Is that correct? I don't know.
Pre
Yeah,
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 pre-language, I think. Yeah, you're
pre-linguistic.
born
Yeah.
into it and it would be like how humans were before language as a whole too, just sort
Mhm.
of that you don't recognize the separation of yourself from the rest of your environment.
Yes, very good. And because all of this connects, because when you don't, when you can't articulate these things, they run wild. So actually, if the child isn't able to articulate why they're wetting the bed, so the child says wetting the bed, and actually it's not because they've got some sort of issue, it's because there's an anxiety in the family, unspoken aggression, unspoken frustration, and bitterness. And so obviously the solution to the problem is the bedwetting, and it's the solution
Yep.
to the problem because everybody can just go, oh, it's almost like a phobia when you've got
Yeah,
a
yeah.
generalized anxiety, yes, and you pin it onto mice or spiders as a way to distance yourself from this internal object.
Yep, yep. It's and then you realize that yeah, I like the idea of calling it a solution because it allows everybody to not pay attention and not go through the difficult process of yeah, realizing what's actually going on. And then the daughter or the teenager or whatever is I think like that criticism was saying the most normal one because they're at least
Yeah.
expressing what's going on in some way.
Yes,
Mm.
absolutely. And the issue is like then people start to think, oh, we can cut it out like a cancer. So instead of it being something that's throughout the entire body of the family, it's like, oh, it's bedwetting. If only we can do hypnosis or we can get some sort of drug or we can do this or that, we can cut it out. Just like desensitization therapy, in which someone has a phobia of spiders. And so you try to just desensitize them to spiders, as if that's the issue, as if and not realizing that the phobia of spiders covers over something else.
Yeah.
And so it's a way, weirdly, of kind of like avoiding the family, avoiding the deeper problems. Just like for the phobic subject, being terrified of butterflies is a great way to avoid confronting the deeper trauma and anxiety that the butterfly represents. But as long as you've got the butterfly to blame, you can say, well, I just don't go
Yeah.
places where there are butterflies. The problem, by the way, with phobia is eventually it starts to keep growing because unconsciously you try to get more distance and more distance. So suddenly you can't go where butterflies are, and then you can't watch certain TV programs, and then you can't stand moths and other flying things. And eventually, a phobia can really dominate your life unless you can get to actually what lies beneath it or within it.
I really like how you switched from the example from spiders to butterflies, because I was like, when you're like, oh, it's really not about the fear of spiders. Like, well, I don't know. I think spiders are pretty scary. But when
Yeah.
you switched to butterflies, I was like, yeah, that's too weird and too normal and too nice of a thing to be scared of. But who am I to say what people should and shouldn't be scared of? But there's absolutely no world in which spiders aren't legitimately scary and butterflies
Well,
are legitimately wonderful.
only if you live in Australia. If you live in Australia, then spiders are legitimately something you can be terrified of. Maybe in America as well.
Terrified.
Do
Yeah, I mean, in Florida, the spiders are just
poisonous?
horrendous. I don't. Yeah, there's some definitely some poisonous spiders, but I've met someone who said they had a fear of butterflies, um, and I remember just being like, "Whoa, that is fascinating. I would love to get in that brain and poke around and see what's
Yeah.
going on to make
Yeah, it's
that
a
have
very
happened."
common one. Yeah, it's a really weirdly
Really?
common one. Yeah, and birds. I have a friend who's a psychoanalyst. He's been in psychoanalysis for years. I was sitting in a park one day with him, and we were chatting, and I was chatting to him and said, "We're talking about the cure, the psychoanalytic cure," and I go like, "Do you ever wonder whether this cure in terms of individuals is really as effective as we would like it to be?" And he was, we were talking about it, and then a bird flew past him and he went crazy, and I was like, "Look, you've been in therapy for 25 years, you're still terrified of birds." And he's like,
Well,
"Yeah."
yeah.
He says
What's
they're
that?
flying mice. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the? That's very funny. That sounds
Yeah.
almost like synchronicity. When he's, why isn't? Why do you ever feel like this doesn't work and he just freaks out and loses his mind at a bird? That's wonderful.
uh,
Uh, there's something going on there. Yeah. The butterfly thing is common.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty common. Anything like that's kind of flittery and wings and small,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah, moths and butterflies, birds, mice, spiders. Those are very common ones.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of a lot of those, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily terrified of them. I don't get
Yeah,
excited when I see a mice,
yeah. I
but
mean,
when I
the
have to trap
phobic,
one,
yeah, the phobic object is whenever, yeah, all of your anxiety gets locked into some object like that. Yeah. So, and that's it. I think it's definitely structurally what we're talking about with this idea of the symptom bearing child
yeah,
is it's like something bears the weight, becomes the concretization of some unspoken anxiety.
yeah. Do you know, have I told you about my phobia? My only thing that I wouldn't even call it a phobia, but I'm revolted by the little holes and things. You know what I'm talking
Oh,
about?
that's a common one. Buttons. What about, do you like buttons with holes in them? Do they freak you out?
No, they don't freak me out.
No.
It's like I think a good example. I forget the name of it. It's like if you crack open a pomegranate. Let's see here. Oh, ugh. Yeah. No, that's it. That'll do it.
Oh, you
Uh,
told me about this. You told me about
yeah.
this.
Ugh.
Yes.
Like all ripped up. Yeah, that grosses me out. It's like a
So
series
what's it
of
about the
holes.
polygram series of holes? Tell me about it.
Uh, they say it's based in like an evolutionary fear of the whole dark places of back in the day you couldn't things could be poisonous or whatever, and so they say that, and it's also not really like an official thing, but there's definitely people. Let me see, my dang keyboard doesn't work. Fear of holes. Yeah. What is it called? Oh, yeah, trypophobia. An aversion or fear of clusters of small holes, bumps, or patterns. I will not hit images on it because I've done that enough times before. A great example is this. What is trypophobia? People who have felt queasy when looking at surfaces that have small holes gathered close together. And then it'll show an example, which is like a almost like a honeycomb type of thing. Certain plants. Yeah, it's real crazy.
Mm. I mean, it sounds like it. I mean, you think, of course, the first thing you think of is skin. You know, skin as a surface which is semi-permeable with lots of holes. Uh, I'd be interested about that connection, if there's any connection with skin
Hmm.
and touch. Do you know my one? I've got a crazy one.
Oh, what is?
Have
Oh,
I told
yeah,
you?
I do know. I do know.
Uh,
This is fascinating. I think
yeah,
I know.
I'm
Yeah.
looking
Okay.
up
Go
the
ahead.
word because I forget the word. The word is sidong lubophobia. I think that's how you say it. Sidong lubophobia.
You're afraid of people sitting on you?
Yes.
Me too.
I am afraid of cotton balls.
Okay, so that's a new one. That's a new one for me.
Is that
Yeah.
right? Cotton wool, cotton wool. Oh my God, it's horrible. See, if you give me like lots of cotton wool and like, you pull it apart,
Yeah.
ah,
Doesn't
ugh.
I can understand. I guess it does something weird to my jaw a little bit. You must hate the dentist.
Yeah, oh yeah, if they stick that stuff in. But here's the crazy thing, if it's wet, it's kind of okay. It's dry, it's when it's dry. So, but yes, if you,
Interesting.
oh yeah, but if you couldn't put cotton wool in my mouth, I would freak out. I'd be horrible. Disgusting.
Wow. When was
Yeah.
the last time you went to the dentist?
You know what? I haven't been to the dentist in 25 years. I don't know. I don't go to doctors or dentists, you know. I
It's
got my
so
teeth
that
straightened out when I came to America because they were like a graveyard and I got the
yeah.
Invisalign that crunched
Yeah.
them all into shape.
Well, they look great.
Yeah.
I did not know about the cotton ball thing. Have you thought about that from a psychoanalytic viewpoint? What's your best guess as to what could be going on there that you don't like cotton balls?
I don't know. I've got a first memory. I have very few memories of my childhood, but I have a memory of a big roll of cotton wool in my parents' house, and it's definitely connected to my mother in some sort of way. But I haven't
Mhm.
done any interest in it. But it's interesting. I have a memory of that cotton wool and that pulling apart and separation, and yeah, there must be something there. I've also got
Airing.
another one. I've got a yeah, tearing. I've got one that doesn't even have a name. It's and I've never found anybody else who has it.
This
So
is the
this
one I think.
oh yeah. Do you want to say it? Or don't say it in case you say one of my sexual fetishes or something.
Yeah, I know this one.
Yes. Yeah.
I do like though, real quick, that your best psychoanalytic guess about the cotton ball phobia was that it may quote have something to do with your mother. That's very on brand. I don't know, maybe something
Yeah.
to do. Uh,
Oh.
well,
Well,
what
what's
was
the
the other
one?
one?
Well, yeah, what do you wanna have a guess at what it is?
No, I want
No.
you to say because I do know of one, and I want to know if there's now going to be a third that I know, or a
Okay.
second that I didn't know about. What do you got?
Well, and this freaks me out, man. I hate this. I hate this. The sound of heartbeats.
There it is. That's the one I know about. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, sound of
yeah.
heartbeats freaks me out. I can just about cope with it in movies and stuff like that now, but I see my own heartbeat, putting my fingers to my wrist.
Uh-huh.
Oh, would hate to do that.
Really? So it's just the feeling
Yeah.
too. It's not even the sound.
Oh God, the feeling's the worst. Oh, the feeling's the worst. My goodness. That pulsy beat. Oh, disgusting.
All right. So that couldn't be anything but Death Drive, right?
Oh, you broke
Right?
up there for a second. Thankfully, you
Oh,
didn't hear that. Were you analyzing
yeah.
me?
I mean, that's pure Death Drive.
Oh,
Uh-oh, you're breaking up again. Very symbolic. And we're back. Sorry about that, folks. Do you Where was I? Oh, okay. It was great. It's cut off right when I was saying, did you hear what I said about the heartbeat thing?
no, thankfully, were you psychoanalyzing me?
Well, I mean, it seems like it's right there. It seems like it's a death drive for sure. Like you're wanting you're freaked out by the fact that you're alive,
Yeah, well, very good. I think there's probably an element of that, and that's very good. It's
right?
definitely a symbol of life. Um,
But
And
I get it, man. It's a creepy, ominous thing, and it's been used a lot in horror movies, and it's not the most comfortable sound.
yeah, but I, for some reason, there's not even a name for it. That's why I think it's such a rare phobia, which means it's, it's definitely have to analyze it at some point. But yeah,
So if I were to like pass out around you, would you check my pulse or would you just go, ah, wish
well,
them luck?
I would check your pulse. I could do it
Thank you.
if I had a push, I would do it. Yes.
That's great. I appreciate it. Well, let's what else do we have on
Oh
identify
yeah.
patient? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, one of the things I think is most interesting about this is actually that you can apply it to society. That so you take something like homelessness. If you have a city and there's a lot of homelessness, and people think that homelessness is the problem and a problem that you should solve. From this perspective, the homelessness is not the problem; it's the solution to a problem. There's a problem within the society. Maybe it's underemployment, maybe it's lack of mental health provision, variety of things. So there's a problem in the society, and the solution to it is to have a population that you can manage, police, arrest, move around. Just like in LA, there's massive homelessness, and then you have Skid Row. Skid Row is not a problem, it's a solution to a problem. It shows that there's a problem within the society, but the society can then look at Skid Row and go, oh, that's the problem, rather than seeing Skid Row as dialectically related to an issue within the economic frame of Los Angeles itself. And that,
Hmm.
by the way, means that to you listen to the homeless or the prison population in a sense that they are the voice of the truth of the society. They are the site that speaks of the issue that is not spoken. And so, in a sense, we are not good news to the homeless. The homeless are good news to us because they speak to, they kind of ask us to change, to repent, to transform society so that you don't need that population anymore. And the big thing here is if you don't find out what the problem is that the homeless population is the solution to, you'll never really get rid of it. You might be able to give people blankets, you might be able to police it a bit better, you might be able to repaint areas, whatever. But ultimately, until you work out what the systemic kind of issue is within Los Angeles, the homeless population will be the manifestation, the coagulation of the problem.
Yeah, it reminds me of when people say that if we just killed all the men, we wouldn't have a patriarchy or misogyny anymore. Mm, no,
Wow,
thanks everyone.
who are you hanging out with?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a pretty
Uh,
extreme one, but
I just, yeah. Oh, you haven't heard that? Yeah, I've seen
no.
it on people just go, like, we just need to kill all the men. I'm like, all right, well,
Yeah.
you can start. You start with Pete.
Who's going
Pete's
to
got a
open
fear
up the
of
jars? Who's going to open up the
exactly.
marmalade jars?
Yeah, I like to think that that's me in my house, but we'll see. It goes back. Yeah, it's a great example. I was in Puerto Vallarta recently, Peter, and
Yeah, I saw the pictures, by the way. It looked very cool. I was very
crazy,
jealous. Yeah.
beautiful, dude. I was truly blown away and jealous of what I was experiencing at the time. It was beyond what I expected a million times over. And I was walking down the streets at one point, me, Grace, Mamrie, Chip, and then I'm like very proud of myself at one point because I'm watching where I'm going, and there's a lot of like potholes in that little downtown area, and I was making sure like Grace was not tripping, and like I was like, watch your step, watch where you're going, and then we were about to arrive at this bar, and I like start looking at the bar instead of looking down at where I'm walking, and I'm naturally, of course, because it's got to be the most embarrassing thing. I trip, I fell into a pothole that was not even really a pothole. It was actually built into the pavement. It was just how the road was. And I rolled my foot so hard that like I almost fell completely over. Like I was like my knees went to like a right angle. I went down and I was like, oh, and then there was some laughter because it was very in public, and there was a homeless person who was gentleman who was sitting on the wall who saw it, and he saw me do it, and he just out it to the whole street just goes, once a week,
Oh, wow.
Happens once a week. And I was like, oh, that's great. I was like, this happens all the time. And of course it was me. And it was the person who was homeless, who was just sitting there chilling, who was the one who called out
Yeah.
the truth of the matter, which is that I was an idiot. And it hurt very bad for quite a while. And it still hurts, but it's getting better. But yeah, that reminded me of
I
that when you
did
were like,
see that. I did see that, by the way, and I wondered what had happened. Like, how long did that not take you out for weeks?
took me out for a day. Yeah, first
Just a
I thought it was
day,
gonna be
or
months. Yeah, I because last time I hurt my foot, it was a really, really long time that it took to heal. But this is still it still hurts. Like every now and then it'll just like kick me, and I'll be like, oh crap, that hurts a lot. But it's way better. And I just Grace iced it a lot and put cold beer on it. It was very nice and very nursey toward me. But also it was all on a bed that had a giant vagina as the artwork.
oh, I
Giant.
saw that.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I've never seen it. I was like, this is so graphic and so intense. And I'm just like in pain looking up at this thing. And I was like, this is a strange trip, but it's very fun. Anyway,
Wow.
uh, back to what you were saying on a societal level, I totally agree that it's the symptoms problem thing. Anytime it's all fun, you just realize it's all projection and all a product of the symptom versus cause thing. It's such a fun little game to play. At least in even if it's not 100% true all the time, if you can start thinking of it in that context, it can open you up to certain things about the society or certain things about yourself that can be productive on a mental level.
100%. Like, so in most societies have a little bit of homelessness, right? There'll always be those things. They'll always, just as everybody has physical ailments, things that go wrong. But if you have a society where there's a huge population problem, or a homeless problem, or a huge prison population, or a lot of mental health issues, then you start going, oh, this isn't just like a problem, it's the solution to a problem. And as you said, even a perfect society, just like a perfect body, you'll still get aches and pains, and eventually, you'll have a minor heart attack or something. But generally, you'll be healthy enough. But
Mhm.
whenever I know people, you'll know people as well. But when people have persistent, various kind of illnesses that often have very symbolic dimensions, like obviously digestive stuff, or headaches, or jaw hurt, crunching your jaw, your teeth, or sore back, and nothing can ever be found. Then often that's a hint that these things are actually a coagulation of something that's not being spoken. Just like in the family, the one child who's wetting the bed is actually the bringing together, the symptom of
Mhm.
the family. So yeah, it's a good way to think, you know.
Yeah, it's a very productive way, and it also takes so much pressure off of the people I think that are being or have so much put on them, like the homeless population and the prison population, or the kid in the family, or the problem that you perceive to be the problem in whatever relationship it is, end up bearing the burden of other people's neurosis and other people's failures or the system's failures, and no wonder everything is so messed up. I mean, to allow other people, especially children or your family members, to consistently carry what you refuse to deal with seems a little unfair if you think about it.
Yes, yes, no,
That's all I got.
totally. And the thing is, like, as I say, we think that I think that I am inside my head, but in a more precise way, I am made up of all of these relationships and relations with other people, because we're creatures of language and we share language. And so, even in most relationships, even in a relationship where one person is very dysfunctional, I actually had a conversation today with somebody uh, who's a member of their family, went out, got married to, or almost married to, somebody who had uh, serious rage issues and criminal issues. And then that didn't happen. And then they ended up marrying a second person, completely different, but had criminal background and rage and issues. And what was interesting is, even in that situation where she's definitely innocent, and definitely the guys that she has been with, those two, and I think there was a third, are people who were had serious issues. There was still something in her that was attracted to and drawn to or working itself out, or and it's and basically family dynamics, right? You got to go
Hmm.
like, okay, let's understand what is it within the family dynamics that is drawing her to these people. So again, it's this dialectic of, instead of seeing these two people as completely, one is innocent and one is guilty, of seeing that even whenever it's very clear, because in this issue it was very clear, there was a guy who was guilty, not a good, he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't a great guy, and she, probably shouldn't have been with him, and eventually they split up. But even in that situation, there's a question of, right, what is playing out here? Why are these people orbiting each other's lives? And it's very important for us to try to break out of this notion that we are atoms. It's a very modern notion that we are private individuals who have our
Hmm.
own internal world. I mean, even with mimetic desire, you start to desire what the other person desires. At a very simple level, you go out with somebody and they like French movies, and eventually you start liking French movies. And then when you break up, you want half of the French movies because you desire it. You desired their desire. Their desire formed your desire. Then you
Yeah.
say, that's my desire. And but so even with the most basic thing of desire, you can see how we are intimately interconnected. We take on the burdens of each other.
Yeah, in this stuff I'm studying about complexes, which I think is a great way to look at a lot of that behavior, especially with the person who like repeats that same type of person that dates the bad boy constantly. Um, One of the things I was listening to was saying that when you're the idea of the complex from the Jungian perspective is basically that it's rooted in trauma, and it can act autonomously at times, and it will throughout your life constantly be looking for more material to fill in, like, so and it does it unconsciously, so you end up in a relationship again and you go, how did I get here? How do I keep making this same mistake? And it's because you have something that has not yet been brought into consciousness, that you are unaware of, that is seeking some sort of it's seeking some kind of activation and seeking some kind of fulfillment. And the catch 22, or the bad news is, at least in this, in Union theory, you can't really get rid of the complex ever. It's never going to like go away. You can't cure it. It's not going to get, you can't solve it, but you can learn that it's there, and learn to sort of quote unquote fill it with something that is not as destructive in your everyday life.
Yes. And this,
Very
by the
fun.
way, this is one of the reasons. I know I keep bringing this up in our podcast, but this is why I kind of say often that while meditation is great and can be very helpful for people, meditation is not the best technique to get to the unconscious, for one simple reason. Or maybe we talked about this last time, I'm not sure, but the idea is that we project stuff onto somebody else. So often the parts of myself that I can't look at, I put onto somebody else. And it's them, if they're trained, they can then kind of like manifest and show me that part of myself that I've put onto them. And that's again what we're talking about with this the symptom bearing child or whatever, is that the family unit don't even notice that it's happening, but the child notices it's happening. They
Yeah.
feel it. And eventually, if they're able to speak it, they're able to say, because the parents could be, sitting doing meditation, doing all that, but the child bears the unknown face of the other. Um, and oh yeah, what was I going to say about that? Oh yeah,
the
so
un
go ahead.
the unlived life of the parent, to bring us back to
Yes, oh
that
yes,
book.
and the unlived life of the parent. Yes, it's there, and when it's spoken, when it's brought to the surface, then you begin to see that element. But yeah,
Yeah. Was in a therapy session yesterday, and it was a good one, an intense one, which sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's more just like whatever, which I've had even therapy sessions about how he gets really frustrated with me sometimes because I come in and I'm like, everything's great. I'm doing great. Everything's good. And, which I did yesterday because I felt that's how things were going. And of course, as you go through these things, it ends up not being that way. And we were working on this correspondence that I'm trying to like get going. I'm trying to word something the correct way, and get my thoughts out in a way that's the way I want to get him out, and I'm trying to, because I can shoot from the hip sometimes, trying to spend some time with it. And I read it back to him, that what we were kind of brainstorming back and forth, and as I was reading it back, I was like, oh crap. I was like, I know he's gonna read me reading it. Like, it's not just gonna be the text. He's gonna listen to the way I'm speaking what I'm writing. And so I had that thought as I was reading it back to him. And I started, as I was reading the words were making me get emotional. Like, I was starting to feel like I might tear up or kind of choke up or something like that. And I was like, no, I was like, I am not going to let him see that. I'm not going to get emotional about this right now. There's time for that later when I'm by myself. I don't want to do it around somebody. And then I didn't think anything about it. And he kind of listens to it and he's like, all right, that's all good. It's like 10 minutes later and he goes, I got a thought. And I was like, oh no, he's got a thought. And he was like, I can see something. He was like, that I think you are unconscious of, that explains a lot that you might want to take into account. And I was like, okay, this is, I guess, what I pay for. Lay it on me. And he was like, you when you're reading, he was like, this is a very serious thing that you're reading. He was like, this is a difficult thing that you're trying to get out. He was like, when you're reading it to me, you're reading it in this very happy-go-lucky voice. You're reading it in this very high-pitched voice. He was like, it's almost like you're on helium. It's almost like you're leaning forward and you're talking not in a simple, like, you're not you're compensating for something. And I was like, it's funny that you say that. I was like, because when I was reading it, I didn't want to get emotional in front of you. And so I was like, I'm going to purposefully come off like this is fine, as a way of making sure that I don't, break apart. And he was like, yeah, he was like, now extend that. He goes, think about what other areas of your life you do that in and have done that in. He was like, think about how you were in a marriage for a decade. Think about how you stayed in a religion for so long because you're walking around going, everything's great, everything's great. He was like, think about how you come into my consulting room most weeks and you're going, everything's great, everything's fine, everything's great. He's like, something in you is unconscious of the fact, and he was like, it's probably rooted in your childhood, but there's something going on where you are you're keeping everybody happy, you're keeping everybody happy go lucky and being cool about stuff. And he was like, you are the youngest. He was like, that might have something to do with it. He was like, I was the youngest and it became a thing where it's like pretend everything's okay all the time. And I was like, and he's like, he's like, just think about it throughout the week and think about how often you do that. And I was like, okay, fine. And I was like, and then it brought up the conversation about complexes. And I was like, oh, I truly am unconscious of it. And I know, like, Grace will get frustrated with me because she'll be like, everything's just fine all the time. Like, you're fine all the time. And I'm like, yeah, no, I really feel like I'm fine all the time. And then I'll get upset about something out of nowhere. And I'm like, oh, there is actually, reading about this stuff does not cure you
Yes.
of falling victim to it. So yeah, it's a little
Yes,
tangent for
yes.
you.
No, that's very good, and that made me think of a couple of things. So one is sometimes you see in a family that, for example, there's a lot of sadness and unhappiness, and then a child has to be the life and soul, and the child kind of like hides the unhappiness of the parents. So as long as the child is happy and the child is doing well and all of that, then that generalized unhappiness, say between the parents, doesn't get seen. But if the
Yeah.
child then is unhappy, it's not just that the parents see an unhappy child, is that they're confronted with the unhappiness or brokenness within the family. Or another one in America I see a lot is sometimes religious parents they have doubts about their religion, but the way they cover over those doubts is as long as their child believes. And even though they know their child doesn't, say their child pretends to still go to church and everybody knows that they don't really, but they still play the game, then the parents are able to avoid a confrontation with their own doubt and unknowing. And so everybody plays this game where the child has to say, basically pretend to still believe.
Yep.
And if the child actually says at the dinner table, I don't believe, the true trauma is not that the parents realize their child doesn't believe, because of course they know the child doesn't believe, right? They know the child's off in a different city having a good time, not going to church. What the true trauma is they are now confronted with the disavowed, the repressed doubts
Speaking
that
it.
they
Yeah.
had. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that was a nutty little I was like, "Oh, crap, I was like, "I gotta work on this now? Alright." This stuff's a pain in the ass. I was like, "I'm done. I'm outta here." But, yeah, I think that's very true, and I hear that sometimes from folks of, especially in the South, there is a culture often of just like, "That's fine, like, you can do whatever you want, like, believe whatever you want and be that way, just keep your mouth shut, like, don't
Yeah.
talk about keep it copacetic, keep it happy." Um, and then everybody loses their minds and everyone's
Yeah.
unhappy very often.
Like as well, like I've seen in Middle America where a son will come home or a daughter will come home with their partner, and the two people will sleep in separate rooms in the parents' house, even though everybody in the family knows that they sleep in the same room and sleep together when they're
Yeah,
apart. And so the idea is that, and this is, I think we should do a whole episode on this, but the idea that nobody believes it, but we all refuse to acknowledge our belief. We disavow the belief we have. Or I know somebody who, every time her parents came round to her house, she would hide the alcohol. And one
yeah,
time she hadn't hidden some alcohol, and the parents said, it caused an argument. And I said to my friend, do your parents kind of not know that you drink? And she said, oh, no, they do. In fact, they're the ones who tell me to hide the alcohol when they come round, right? So it
yeah,
was this conceit that everybody was part of in order to cover over. So the idea was, she said to me, well, if I didn't hide the alcohol, there would be a crisis within the family unit. But I'm going,
yep,
of course, the crisis in the family unit is already there. This is just covering over it. So
yep,
yeah.
yeah, and then that's fine.
Yes.
Deal. Which is
Yeah.
also okay sometimes, especially if it's, Christmas, I guess,
Yeah.
or some other, Halloween, whatever your family holiday is of choice. Well, Pete, any other final thoughts about this particular subject of identified patients slash phobias, which I thought was a really fun one. We should maybe title this Phobias slash
Yeah. I
Phobias
well,
maybe.
although I think we could do a whole episode on phobias. Actually, it definitely touched on this notion, but
Yeah,
there's loads more we could play into with phobia. Actually, so let's
cool.
do one on that. Um,
Love it.
yeah, no, I've enjoyed this. This I think it's a very simple but profound idea, and at the very heart, it's the idea that I am formed by these relationships around me, and that I carry often what's repressed and disavowed within family units, and the explosions of violence often within society as well are the symptoms of more generalized issues. And as we become more sensitive to looking at that, it can be very, very beneficial, both politically and personally. So yeah, no, I think I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
I love that. I also think it's a fun thing to reverse when someone's getting really upset with you and really angry at you, and you're like, "I know we might disagree, but you seem really upset." Happens on the internet all the time. People freak
Yes.
out, and you're like, "Oh, you are definitely really upset. Seems like that maybe you're throwing something on me that is not really me." Which is a fun little game to play. So,
Yes.
anyway, thank you very much, Pete. I enjoyed this very much. I miss you so much. You better come home
Yeah.
soon.
Man,
Stay
you
safe.
too. Can't wait. I can't wait to do this in person, and I can't wait for us just to do one of those wee nights where we have a few drinks and listen to some music
Have some
together. And
fun.
so let's just do that as soon as I get back.
Exactly. And if you would like to, I'm so excited. And if you would like to support this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/the fundamentalists. If you would like to support Pete, you can go to patreon.com/Peter Rollins. And you can check out his peterrollins.com website where he has all sorts of fun information. And if you would like to see me do stand up, you can go to elliottmorgan.com/tour. Thank you, everybody. And please remember, I have nothing after that. I have no, I like it was good. I like to leave it hanging like that. All right. Bye,
Yeah.
everybody.
Bye.